Caitlin Clark's rookie season has been an absolute phenomenon, right? Shattering viewership records, bringing all these new eyes to the WNBA. But along with the amazing passes and those logo threes, another story has just exploded. It's a debate that's raging everywhere, in the stands, all over social media, and even on the coaches' benches. The big question is, are opponents using uncalled illegal physicality as a deliberate strategy to shut down the league's biggest star? Okay, let's really get into this.
So, here's how we're gonna break this all down. We're gonna investigate the evidence, piece by piece. We'll start with what everyone's seeing with their own eyes, then we'll dig into the hard data, break down the actual rulebook, look at some other theories, and finally, check out a real-world experiment that might just hold the answer.
All right, so let's kick off our investigation right where most fans did, with the eye test. You know what I'm talking about. It's that feeling you get watching a game, the one that so many fans, coaches, and analysts seem to share, that Caitlin Clark is just being officiated differently. That the kind of physical play she faces, it just consistently crosses a line.
And not frustration, it is not just coming from fans on Twitter. This is a direct quote from the Indiana Fever's head coach Stephanie White after a really rough game. Now, when a coach is willing to risk a big fine from the league to say something like this out loud, that tells you the frustration has hit a boiling point right inside the locker room.
Look, this isn't about one or two hard fouls. When you look at the game tape, you see a consistent pattern. We're talking about plays like that infamous hip check from Kennedy Carter, a full-body shove way away from the ball that didn't even get a whistle at first. But it's also the constant little stuff. Defenders grabbing her jersey as she's trying to get open off screens, constant hand-checking when she drives to the basket, and even defenders stepping into her landing space after she shoots, which is one of the most dangerous plays in basketball.
The eye test is one thing, but it can be subjective, right? So let's move our investigation to the second piece of evidence, the cold, hard data. We're going to shift from what we think we're seeing to what the numbers actually prove.
And this is where it gets kind of wild. The data shows a pretty stunning concentration. Across the entire 2024 WNBA season, there were 34 reviewed flagrant fouls. An analysis by StatSurge found that a staggering 17.6% of them, that's nearly 1 out of every 5, were committed against one single player, Caitlin Clark.
Let's just look at the raw numbers here for a second. Clark was on the receiving end of 6 flagrant fouls. The next closest players on the list, Sophie Cunningham and Alicia Gray, each had 3. That is literally double the number of flagrants against her compared to anyone else in the entire league. So you have to ask, is this just bad luck? A random fluke? Well, data scientists at StatSurge used a statistical model that's perfect for figuring out the probability of rare events. And they calculated the odds of one player getting 6 flagrant fouls just by pure chance. The probability? 0.001%. To put that another way, that is a 1 in 100,000 chance. The numbers are screaming that this is not random.
Okay, so we've seen the video, we've seen the data. But to really get what's going on, we gotta pause the investigation for a second and just establish a baseline. What does the official WNBA rulebook actually say? What's the real difference between a tough legal basketball play and an illegal one?
A huge part of this whole debate is about screens. Now, according to the rulebook, a legal screen is when a player is stationary like a brick wall. They have to give their opponent space to avoid them, and they absorb contact, they don't create it. An illegal screen is the exact opposite. The player is moving to block a defender, they don't give them space, where they stick out their hips or arms to make contact. And a lot of critics argue that this is a key tactic being used against Clark, a moving wall strategy that refs just consistently let slide.
At this point, it's pretty easy to just jump to conclusions, right? To say it's a targeted campaign. But for a real investigation, we have to consider a pretty important counterargument. What if this isn't really about one player at all? What if it's actually a symptom of a much bigger, league-wide problem? And this is really the pivot point of our whole analysis. Are we watching a deliberate strategy to target Caitlin Clark, or is her situation just the most visible example of a systemic failure in the WNBA's whole officiating culture?
That same StatSurge analysis suggests the answer isn't that simple. They actually propose a perfect storm of a few different factors. First, yeah, some of the fouls might actually be intentional. Second, Clark's incredible talent forces defenders to play at an intensity they're not used to, which can lead to sloppier, more physical fouls. And third, there might even be a weird kind of referee bias. With so much attention on her, refs might be hyper-aware and actually more likely to upgrade a foul against her to a flagrant.
And then there's this. Sports Illustrated points to an even deeper, more structural problem: resources. Unlike the refs in the NBA, who are full-time salaried employees, WNBA refs are part-time contractors who get paid by the game. The WNBA also doesn't have the same transparency as the NBA's last 2-minute report, and they don't have a big, centralized replay center. All that adds up to a pretty significant resource gap that could be causing inconsistent officiating for everyone.
So, with all these different theories swirling around, how can we possibly know what's really going on? Well, our investigation now gets to its climax, a real-world case study. What happens when you take Caitlin Clark out of the WNBA's officiating environment and put her in a tournament where the rules are called strictly, and I mean strictly, by the book?
Okay, first, let's set that WNBA baseline one more time. Remember Coach Stephanie White? During the Fever's playoff run, she pointed out this incredible statistic. Her team had shot 31 times fewer free throws than their opponents, a minus 31 discrepancy. For a team that drives to the basket all the time, that number suggests a whole lot of uncalled contact. Now for the experiment. When Clark played for Team USA in a FIBA qualifying tournament, something just remarkable happened. With international refs who were calling hand checks, flagging illegal screens, and just enforcing the rulebook consistently, she didn't just play well. She went on an absolute tear, setting or breaking 14 world records in a single week.
And this quote from the YouTube channel The Sports Maximum just nails it. The conclusion seems almost unavoidable. The FIBA tournament was basically a controlled experiment. The only major thing that changed was the officiating, and the result was one of the most dominant performances we have ever seen. It's a direct link between the refereeing style and her production on the court.
Okay, so the evidence is on the table. We've seen the eye test, we've seen the shocking stats, and we've seen the dramatic results of the FIBA experiment. So where does that leave the WNBA? This brings our investigation to its endpoint. What happens now?
Well, when she was asked directly about all these officiating concerns, WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert's response was, quote, "They are human." Now, for a lot of critics, this felt pretty dismissive. I mean, the argument was never about demanding perfection from the refs. It was about a consistent and directional pattern of missed calls. Random human error, that goes both ways. But the patterns we've just looked at suggest something else entirely.
So what would a real path forward look like? Well, based on everything we've talked about, experts suggest a few key steps. First, the league just has to acknowledge the pattern. From there, it needs to fix those structural issues, invest in full-time referees, increase transparency with things like public foul reports, and most importantly, just make sure the rulebook is applied the same way for every player on every single team.
And this really brings us to our final question. The data shows something that is not random. The video shows a clear pattern of physical play. A real-world experiment seems to show a direct link between officiating and performance. It leaves the WNBA, and really all of us watching, with a huge question to think about. When a game's rules seem to apply differently to its biggest star, who is ultimately responsible for making the right call?